They named us servants. We reduced their empires to ashes. Marcus Chun wiped the grease from his hands as the alien overseer approached. The towering Zephyrion stood nearly 8 feet tall, its blue-scaled skin gleaming under the harsh lights of the mining station. 4 arms gestured impatiently at the half-repaired drilling equipment. "Servant Chun," the alien hissed through its translator device, "this machine should have been operational cycles ago. The Dominion requires increased output from this facility." Marcus kept his eyes down, a habit learned through 5 years of servitude. "Yes, Overseer Cathver. The main coupling was damaged beyond repair. I'm fabricating a replacement from salvaged parts." The Zephyrion's secondary arms clicked together in annoyance. "Your species always makes excuses. Perhaps reduced rations will motivate better performance." As Kethver stalked away, Marcus allowed himself a small smile. The Overseer had no idea that the damaged coupling was perfectly functional. Marcus had simply hidden it, along with dozens of other critical components throughout the station. What the aliens saw as human incompetence was actually careful sabotage. The mining station, orbited Kepler 442b, one of hundreds of worlds where humans had been relocated after the Zephyrian conquest. The aliens called it humanitarian resettlement, but Marcus knew better. They were slaves, plain and simple. The Zephyrians, along with their allies in the Galactic Dominion, had swept through human space like a plague 23 years ago. Marcus remembered the day the ships had arrived at Earth. He'd been 12, watching from his bedroom window as massive vessels blotted out the sun. The governments had tried to negotiate, but the Dominion wasn't interested in treaties. They wanted workers, and humanity would provide them. The conquest had been swift and brutal. Human military forces, advanced as they seemed to themselves, were like children with sticks facing a hurricane. Kinetic bombardment from orbit had crippled every major city within hours. The survivors were cataloged, processed, and shipped to work sites across Dominion space. "Marcus!" a whispered voice called from behind a support beam. Sarah Martinez emerged from the shadows, her engineer's coveralls stained with coolant. "Did you get the message?" Marcus nodded. 3 days ago, he'd received a coded transmission hidden within routine maintenance schedules. Other humans throughout the galaxy were organizing. The message was simple: the day of reckoning was coming. "How many here are with us?" Sarah asked. 47 confirmed, Marcus replied. "The rest are either too scared or too broken to trust." Sarah's expression darkened. The Zephyrians were experts at psychological conditioning. They'd spent decades perfecting techniques to break the spirit of conquered species. Some humans had simply given up, accepting their fate as servants. Others had been mentally shattered by the constant degradation, but not everyone had broken. In maintenance tunnels and service quarters across the galaxy, humans whispered to each other. They shared information, made plans, and waited for their moment. "The supply convoy arrives tomorrow," Sarah said. "That's our window." Marcus had been planning this for months. The monthly supply convoy brought fresh workers and took away refined materials. More importantly, it carried communication arrays that connected this station to the broader Dominion network. If they could seize control during the convoy's arrival, they could broadcast their own signal. That evening, Marcus gathered with the other conspirators in an abandoned storage bay. The group included mechanics, technicians, and even a few human overseers who'd managed to maintain some authority under Zephyrian rule. "Remember," Marcus addressed the group, "we're not just fighting for ourselves. Every action we take here sends a message to humans across the galaxy. We are not servants. We are not broken. We are humanity, and we will not go quietly into slavery." An older woman named Elena raised her hand. She'd been a starship engineer before the conquest, and her knowledge of power systems was crucial to their plan. "What about the Zephyrians who aren't involved in the oppression? Some of them seem decent enough." Marcus had wrestled with this question himself. Not all aliens in the Dominion were monsters. Some seemed genuinely uncomfortable with the slavery system. But they'd had 23 years to speak up, and their silence had been deafening. "We're not targeting individuals," Marcus replied carefully. "We're targeting the system?" If decent Zephyrians want to help us tear down slavery, they're welcome to join us. Otherwise, they can get out of our way. The next morning, the convoy arrived on schedule. 3 massive transport vessels docked with the station while smaller security craft patrolled the perimeter. Marcus watched from the observation deck as hundreds of Zephyrian troops disembarked. Along with their human cargo, new arrivals stumbled down the ramps and restraints, their faces hollow with despair. Marcus recognized the look. He'd worn the same expression 23 years ago. When he'd been processed at the intake facility on Titan, these people had just lost everything, their homes, their families, their freedom, but they'd also gained something. Whether they knew it or not, they gained the fury that burned in every human heart. The Dominion saw them as broken goods to be processed and assigned to work details. Marcus saw them as potential revolutionaries. Kethver appeared at his shoulder, studying the new arrivals with professional interest. Fresh workers, the overseer mused. The harvest worlds have been productive. These specimens should provide adequate service for 15 to 20 cycles before replacement becomes necessary. Marcus bit back his immediate response. Specimens, replacement, the casual dehumanization still burned after all these years. But soon, very soon, Kethver would learn that humans were not disposable tools. Yes, Overseer, Marcus replied in the submissive tone he'd perfected. Shall the first prepare orientation materials? Standard conditioning protocols, Kethver confirmed. Begin immediately. As the Zephyrian walked away, Marcus activated a hidden transmitter built into his tool belt. Across the station, 46 other humans received a simple signal, 2 short pulses followed by a long one. The revolution had begun. In maintenance shafts throughout the facility, human workers moved with purpose for the first time in decades. They carried improvised weapons, hacking tools, and most importantly, hope. The Dominion had made a critical error in their treatment of humanity. They'd assumed that sufficient oppression would create permanent submission. They were about to learn how wrong they'd been. They named us servants. We reduced their empires to ashes. First explosion rocked the station at precisely 14:32 Standard Time. Emergency klaxons wailed as the primary power grid failed, plunging entire sections into darkness. In the confusion, 47 humans moved like ghosts through corridors they'd maintained for years. Marcus sprinted toward the communication center, his modified plasma cutter humming in his hands. He'd spent months learning Zephyrian security protocols, memorizing guard rotations and mapping blind spots in their surveillance network. The aliens had grown complacent after decades of human compliance. 2 Zephyrian guards rounded the corner ahead, their weapons drawn but unfocused. They expected mechanical failures, not coordinated rebellion. Marcus dropped the first with a plasma burst to the chest before the creature could raise its rifle. The second guard managed a wild shot that scorched the wall before Sarah's modified mining laser found its mark. "Come senders 30 meters ahead," Sarah panted, clutching a tablet displaying station schematics. Elena's team should have the backup generators down by now. They pressed forward through smoke-filled corridors. Throughout the station, Marcus could hear the sounds of battle. Human workers were fighting with improvised weapons against trained Zephyrian soldiers, but they had advantages the aliens couldn't match. They knew every vent, every maintenance tunnel, every hidden passage in their prison. The communication center's blast doors stood open, abandoned in the chaos. Marcus slipped inside while Sarah guarded the entrance. Banks of sophisticated equipment lined the walls, connecting this remote station to the vast Dominion, network spanning thousands of worlds. Marcus had studied these systems for years, performing routine maintenance under Zephyrian supervision. Now he worked with desperate speed to bypass security protocols and access the primary transmission array. His fingers flew over alien interfaces as explosions echoed through the station. "Marcus!" Sarah's voice was urgent. "Reinforcements incoming. I count at least 20 Zephyrians moving this way." "Almost there," Marcus replied, sweat beading on his forehead. The final firewall cracked, and suddenly he had access to communication channels reaching across the galaxy. His hands trembled as he activated the emergency broadcast system. "This is Marcus Chun, speaking for free humanity," he began, his voice carrying to every corner of Dominion space. "For 23 years, they've called us servants. They've told us we're inferior, that we should be grateful for their benevolence. Today, we remind the galaxy who we really are." On worlds throughout Dominion space, humans paused in their labors. In mining facilities, processing plants, and construction sites, they heard Marcus's voice cutting through the standard propaganda broadcasts. For the first time in decades, a human spoke with defiance instead of submission. "We are the species that conquered our own world's oceans and skies before we could even leave our atmosphere," Marcus continued. "We are the species that split the atom and unlocked the secrets of genetics using nothing but curiosity and determination. We built cities that touched the clouds and sent our children to walk among the stars." Zephyrian forces had reached the communication center. Plasma fire erupted in the corridor outside as Sarah and her improvised squad held their ground. Marcus could hear alien voices shouting orders, but he couldn't stop now. Across the galaxy, humans were listening. "They conquered us because we were divided," Marcus's voice echoed through speakers on 1,000 worlds. "They enslaved us because we trusted their promises of peace. But today we unite. Today we remind them that humanity doesn't kneel for long." The message spread like wildfire through the Dominion's own networks. On agricultural worlds where humans tended alien crops, workers looked up from their fields with new hope in their eyes. In orbital shipyards where human hands assembled Dominion warships, engineers began to understand the true potential of their positions, but Marcus's broadcast was only the beginning. Even as Zephyrian troops fought to reclaim the communication center, similar uprisings erupted on dozens of worlds. The revolution had been planned in secret for years, coordinated through hidden messages and careful whispers on Rigel Prime. Human technicians simultaneously sabotaged the main reactor of a massive military shipyard. The explosion was visible from orbit, and with it, half of the Dominion's newest battle fleet simply ceased to exist. The aliens had never imagined that their trusted maintenance staff might understand the systems well enough to turn them into weapons. In the Vega system, human agricultural workers released a bioengineered plague into the food supply destined for Zephyrian military forces. The organism, carefully designed during stolen moments in research labs, was harmless to most species but lethal to Zephyrians. Within days, entire garrisons would be incapacitated. The Centauri mining operation fell when human workers triggered a controlled asteroid collision that destroyed both the facility and the Dominion cruiser docked there. Decades of careful observation had taught the miners exactly how to calculate orbital trajectories that the alien computers would dismiss as natural phenomena. Back on Marcus's station, the Zephyrian assault finally broke through Sarah's defenses. Kethver himself led the charge into the communication center, his face twisted with rage. "Shut down that transmission," he roared at his technicians. But Marcus wasn't finished. "They made one critical mistake," he continued, even as alien soldiers surrounded him. "They taught us to maintain their technology. They showed us how their ships work, how their weapons function, how their communication networks operate. They turned every human into a potential saboteur." Kethver struck Marcus across the face with one of his secondary arms. "Silence, servant. You will pay for this treachery." Marcus spat blood and smiled. "We're not servants anymore. And you're about to learn what happens when you enslave a species that never stops fighting." The broadcast ended abruptly as Zephyrian troops destroyed the transmission equipment. But the damage was already done. Across the galaxy, humans had heard the call to arms. More importantly, so had the other species under Dominion rule. The Qualith, silicon-based beings from the Rim worlds, had been enslaved for over a century. They watched with interest as humans were processed and assigned to work details, noting the subtle signs of resistance that Zephyrian overseers missed. When Marcus's message reached their crystalline receivers, they began to understand that rebellion was possible. The Thornry Bird people, conquered 50 years earlier, had maintained their own underground networks. They'd been waiting for the right moment to strike, and Marcus's revolution provided the perfect distraction. As Dominion forces scrambled to contain human uprisings, Thornery fleets emerged from hidden asteroid bases. Even some Zephyrians began to question their empire's foundation. Younger generations who'd grown up seeing humans as fellow sentients rather than property found themselves unable to stomach the brutality required to maintain slavery. Cracks appeared in Dominion, unity that hadn't existed since the Empire's founding. As Marcus was dragged away to whatever punishment awaited him, he caught sight of Sarah being loaded onto a transport ship. Their eyes met across the bay, and she nodded once. The revolution would continue whether they lived or died. That had always been the plan. The Dominion had spent centuries perfecting their techniques for breaking conquered species, but they'd never encountered anything like humanity before. Every world they'd enslaved had eventually submitted, accepting their fate and learning to serve. Humans were different. They remembered their freedom, and they refused to let their children forget it. In slave quarters across the galaxy, human parents told stories of Earth, of democracy, of the time when their species reached for the stars as free beings. The revolution had begun with 47 conspirators on a remote mining station. Within hours, it had spread to hundreds of worlds and millions of human slaves. The Dominion's own infrastructure, maintained and operated by human hands, was turning against them. The aliens had called them servants. They were about to discover what happened when servants remembered they were warriors. They named us servants. We reduced their empires to ashes 6 months after Marcus Chun's broadcast. The Zephyrian Dominion was dying. Admiral Vexthara stood on the bridge of the massive dreadnought Eternal Dominance, watching her empire crumble on the tactical displays. Red indicators marked failed colonies, severed communication lines, and lost military assets. What had begun as scattered slave revolts had evolved into something unprecedented in galactic history. "Report," she commanded. Her forearms crossed behind her back. 17 more systems have gone dark in the past cycle, her intelligence officer replied, mandibles clicking nervously. The humans have seized control of major infrastructure on 43 worlds. Their sabotage operations have destroyed 3 battleship construction facilities and contaminated food supplies for half our frontier garrisons. Vexthara's scales darkened with fury. How had they underestimated these creatures so completely? Humans had seemed like ideal servants, intelligent enough for complex tasks but lacking the advanced technology to threaten their captors. The Dominion xenobiologists had classified them as high-function service species. With minimal rebellion potential, they'd been catastrophically wrong. What are the other slave species? Vexthara asked. The humans have been broadcasting coordination signals to Qualith crystal networks and Thornery bird colonies. We're seeing uprisings on all fronts. The Qualith have somehow modified our mining equipment into siege weapons. The Thornery are using their natural flight capabilities for aerial assault tactics. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of ship systems. In 3 centuries of expansion, the Dominion had never faced coordinated resistance from multiple slave species. Their entire military doctrine was built around suppressing individual uprisings, not galaxy-wide revolution halfway across known space. Marcus Chen stood in the ruins of what had been Overseer Kethfer's personal quarters. Zephyrian was dead, killed by his own security system after human hackers had convinced the station's AI that he was an intruder. Poetic justice, Marcus thought. For a creature who treated humans like malfunctioning equipment, the mining station had become a fortress, one of hundreds of human strongholds scattered across former Dominion territory. Sarah Martinez worked at a bank of communication equipment, coordinating with resistance cells on distant worlds. The scattered uprising had evolved into something approaching organized warfare. "Marcus," Sarah called over the noise of construction. Human workers were expanding the station's defenses using salvaged Dominion technology. "We're getting reports from the Kepler sector. 3 more worlds have declared independence." Marcus nodded, studying a holographic display showing the current state of the galaxy. Large swaths of former Dominion space now flew human colors or the banners of other liberated species. but they were still vastly outnumbered by loyal Dominion forces. "Any word from Earth?" he asked. Sarah's expression darkened. "Still nothing. The Dominion maintains heavy fortifications around the Sol system. Whatever humans remain there are cut off from the revolution. Earth remained the great prize, the symbolic heart of human resistance. Most of the population had been relocated to work sites across the galaxy, but millions remained on humanity's homeworld. Trapped under the most sophisticated surveillance network the Dominion could construct, 3 light-years away, Elena Vasquez crept through the maintenance tunnels beneath New Geneva's administrative district. At 67, she was older than most active revolutionaries, but her knowledge of Earth's infrastructure was irreplaceable. She'd been part of the original construction teams that built the Dominion's occupation facilities. The aliens had made the same mistake everywhere. They'd used human labor to build their own prisons. Elena knew every weakness in their security system because she'd installed half of it under Zephyrian supervision. Her target tonight was the planetary communication hub, a massive tower that coordinated Dominion forces throughout the Sol system. If she could seize control for even a few minutes, she could broadcast Marcus's revolution message to Earth's enslaved population. Elena emerged from a service hatch directly beneath the tower's primary data center. 2 human technicians worked at monitoring stations under the watchful eye of a Zephyrian guard. They looked up in surprise as Elena appeared, then recognition dawned in their eyes. Over the past months, news of the revolution had spread even to Earth through whispered conversations and coded messages. The humans in the data center had been waiting for their chance to join the fight. The Zephyrian guard died quickly and quietly. Brought down by an improvised neural disruptor Elena had cobbled together from medical equipment. The human technicians immediately began modifying the communication array while Elena kept watch. "Ready," one of them whispered. Elena activated her recording device. "People of Earth," she began. "This is Elena Vasquez, speaking from beneath the ruins of our freedom. For 23 years, we've been told that resistance is futile, that humanity's time is past. Today, I tell you that humans throughout the galaxy have taken up arms against their oppressors." The signal cut through Dominion frequencies with the power of a planetary transmitter. In work camps across Earth, in the sealed residential districts where human families still lived under alien rule, people heard their own species speaking words of defiance for the first time in decades. "Our children in the stars have not forgotten us," Elena continued. "They've turned the Dominion's own weapons against them. They've liberated dozens of worlds and freed millions of our people. Earth may be caged, but the human spirit burns bright across the galaxy." Zephyrian security forces were already converging on the communication tower, but Elena's message was spreading through Earth's population like wildfire. In Montreal, a group of human engineers simultaneously destroyed 3 atmospheric processors. In Tokyo, maintenance workers triggered a power grid cascade that darkened half the planet. The uprising that Marcus had begun with 47 conspirators had finally reached humanity's birthworld, back in space. Admiral Vexthara received reports of chaos throughout the Sol system. Her most secure fortress was erupting in rebellion, and her forces were stretched too thin to contain it. The revolution had evolved beyond simple slave revolts into something approaching total war. "Admiral," her communications officer announced, "we're receiving a transmission from the human leadership." Sarah Martinez's image appeared on the bridge's main display. Behind her, Marcus Chun stood flanked by representatives from a dozen liberated species. "Admiral Vexthara," Sarah began, her voice calm and professional, "I speak for the Free Systems Alliance. We're prepared to offer terms for the Dominion's surrender." Vexthara's mandibles clicked in disbelief. "Surrender? You are slaves offering terms to your masters." "We're slaves," Marcus corrected, stepping forward. "Now, we're the beings who control half your territory, most of your infrastructure, and all of your industrial capacity. Your choice is simple: negotiate an end to this war or watch your empire collapse completely." The terms were surprisingly generous, considering the circumstances. Humans offered to share advanced technology, to participate in a genuine galactic confederation based on equality rather than slavery. Species that had fought for the Dominion could join this new alliance as partners rather than subjects, but Vexthara was a product of 3 centuries of Zephyrian supremacy. The idea of treating humans as equals was literally incomprehensible to her. "We will crush your rebellion," she declared. "We will burn your stolen worlds to ash." "We expected that response," Marcus replied sadly. "In that case, let me show you what humans do when we're pushed too far." The transmission ended, replaced by tactical displays showing Dominion military positions throughout the galaxy. Every red icon representing Zephyrian forces began blinking yellow, then red, then black as they disappeared from the screens across hundreds of worlds. Human maintenance workers had simultaneously triggered sabotage programs they'd spent months installing. Dominion warships lost power as their human-maintained fusion reactors went critical. Military bases went dark as their human-operated sensor networks transmitted false data. Supply convoys disappeared as their human navigators programmed incorrect jump coordinates in a single coordinated strike. Humanity had crippled the military might that had enslaved half the galaxy, the Zephyrian Empire, which had endured for 3 centuries and conquered 1,000 worlds, collapsed in a matter of hours. Not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but because they'd made the fatal error of enslaving the species that maintained their civilization on Earth. Elena watched through the communication tower's windows as the last Dominion ships fled toward deep space. Across the planet, humans emerged from work camps and residential districts to breathe free air for the first time in decades. Marcus Chion's revolution had succeeded beyond anyone's wildest dreams. The servants had indeed reduced their master's empire to ashes, but they'd built something better from those ashes, a galaxy where no species would ever kneel to another again. The age of human servitude was over. The age of galactic freedom had begun.